The number one question I get asked is, what gear do you use? If you're new here, my name is Connor Trimble. I'm a professional photographer and videographer based here in Honolulu, Hawaii. This is the main gear that I use every time I go to shoot surfing, whether that's personally or professionally for brands like Hurley, O'Neill, or Red Bull. Additionally, I'm going to give you the cost of all of these items, so then that way you have a more realistic expectation of the financial burden that comes with being a water photographer. And hopefully this will help you sort your wants from your needs. Let's start with the camera body. I shoot with the Canon RF because it can shoot 20 photos per second in electronic shutter mode, and it has 4K 120 video, so I can get really great slow motion. It's extremely weatherproofed, and I love the 45 megapixel photos, so I can do tight cropping when I'm editing. But the biggest downside is the battery life is not great, especially when you're shooting video. For me, I think the R5 is the best lightweight hybrid camera body and easy to swim with, but you get maximum quality for photo and video. I do want to note that when I shoot commercially, I have a second R5 body. That's actually why the blue tape is on here, so I can differentiate the two, and I'm shooting with the other R5 now. With all this being said, seriously though, there's so many good cameras now, like the Canon R3, Sony A1, Nikon Z9. You really cannot go wrong. I just went with the R5 because I wanted a smaller body, and honestly, it was before the R3 housings even came out. If I'm shooting sunrise to sunset, which I do a lot when pipe is firing, I'll bring 6 batteries up to North Shore with me. I typically only use 3 to 4 of these, but it's better to be safe than sorry. My go-to water lens is my RF 24-105 f4 with my Aquatech zoom gear. I made a whole video explaining why I think this is the best lens to use in the water, and if you're interested in that, go check that one out. I just want to say though that I'm interested in the new 24-105 f2.8. That's like, it's pretty long and it's all internal zoom. But if you see where the zoom is on it, I think it's gonna be tricky with an underwater housing until a new port comes out specifically for that lens. So in the meantime, I'm stuck using my 24-105 f4. This is the lens that I use 80 to 90% of the time. I will use a 70 to 200, 16 millimeter, 50 or 24 to 70, but the 24-105 f4 is my go-to. For storage, I typically use Angelbird Pro cards. I have 2 512 gigabytes and I have one 1 terabyte card for video heavy days. These are not the most durable cards, but I've never had media issues with them. And one thing I will say is that I've noticed that they don't heat up quite as much as my Lexar cards. A little trick that I use with these cards is that when I'm done using them, I put them face down to let myself know that card is full, I'm done using it for the rest of the day, and don't use that one again, don't format it, etc. For me, I use the Aquatech Edge Pro housing. I think Aquatech has the best overall surf housings because of customer service, speed, and how it's systematic versus having custom parts, so it's easy to fix and get replacement pieces. Also, I really like how you can turn the camera on and off when it's in here. You have full control of your ISO and aperture, and even the entire menu. The only thing that's missing is the control of the shutter, but you can set a custom button for that. Also, switching between photo and video is a huge pain in the butt, but I think that's more of a Canon design flaw than an Aquatech design flaw. I use the 24-105 port, and I have the port cover on this, and you should use this religiously because you definitely don't want any scratches. I have the Aquatech GoPro mount on top, which I suggest using because I had a sticky mount recently just get completely ripped off because of the pressure of the wave at pipe. On top of that, I use a GoPro 12, and typically I'm shooting in 5.3K 60 frames per second. How I mount my GoPro is actually kind of weird. I have this little unicorn aluminum alloy mount that I got off of Amazon. I put it on top of my housing to extend the GoPro out, so then that way I don't have any of the housing in my GoPro frame. You might think this looks kind of dumb. It's definitely not hydrodynamic, but it prevents the GoPro from having any of the housing in the shot, so you're maximizing the best quality from the GoPro and your camera. Another additional purchase is the Aquatech trigger system handle, and I actually use the CMT wrist strap because it's softer, longer, and it rotates better. In case I lose my housing, I want it farther away from me, but this is just personal preference for my old CMT housing. If you're using an underwater housing, you're gonna need some marine oil. You can get that from Aquatech, or you can get tubs of it like this on Amazon. Any marine oil works, and I think just having these on hand is really important. I use food skewers to actually oil my buttons. I found that those work really well for oiling everything. Make sure that your O-rings are always clean and your buttons are lubed up, and you're probably not gonna have any leaks. Lastly, if you want 5% off of Aquatech, here's a code, Connor5, if you want an additional 5% off. It's also 5% off of sale items. Yeah, I'm like an ambassador affiliate with Aquatech because I just genuinely love these housings, and I think that they're the best surf hybrid dive housings that you can get. I'll make a video in the future going into why I think that, and I've tested SPL, CMT, Salty, everything across the board. So Yeah. Switching to on land, I use the Shimoda Action X V2. I love the structure of the inside of this backpack. It just does not really wiggle around too much and it really protects your gear. Padding is amazing. The straps are amazing with a pocket for your phone here. And I really like this roll top here. So if you have a lot in there, you can pack a ton in, but if you don't, you can make it really small. And I highly recommend this bag. I seriously should just make another video exclusively on this bag because it's the best bag that you can get in 2024. One big thing to have is moisture absorbing packets. You can put these in your housing if you're having issues with fogging. I put them in my backpack and my lens drawer in my office just to keep the moisture out of all of your lenses, and this is crucial in ocean environments, especially like Hawaii where I live. 3 must-have accessories for me are a blower for sand and dust, a multi-tool, or at least at the minimum, something to tighten my base plate on my underwater housing. A quarter will work, but I usually use my keychain for my keys. This thing is like $7 and I use it all the time. I have all these multi-tools in all of my bags. There's one from Red, small rig. I have a DaFins one that's actually a snowboard tool or just a typical screwdriver multi-tool. I suggest just getting a bunch of multi-tools and putting them in all your bags, your car, all over the place because I'm constantly changing and rigging up my cameras in different ways between photo, video, in water, out of water, with a Ronin, on a tripod, etc. And so they're always coming in handy. The third thing I actually always have is a cotton t-shirt. The microfiber wipes don't absorb salt water, but cotton shirts do. So it makes cleaning salt water off your lenses and your gear much easier. A soft cotton towel will do the same thing. I almost always bring a sensor cleaning kit with me. Shooting around the ocean, switching lenses, you tend to get dust on the sensor. So if you notice it and it's really bad, I can clean it sight unseen. This is more important for client work days, but if you're wondering, yes. Unfortunately, I've had a filthy sensor way too much in the past, and that's why I have a sensor cleaning kit with me almost always. I have this little Shimoda bag that I keep all my sensor cleaning kit in. It just fits perfectly in the top of my bag. Some necessary items that I need to do my job are surf wax, or you could use candle wax, but I put it on the top of my port so I don't get water drops. I have a whole video on how to avoid water spots, so if you want to understand more on that process, check that video out. I usually bring a squeegee with me just in case, especially on commercial shoots. I really like this yellow one because I can fit it in the sleeve of my wetsuit, or I can just put it right in the front of the wetsuit. This bigger one works really good if you're in a colder environment, you have big mittens or something like that. If you're shooting in, say, Iceland, then you can just wipe it off the whole thing in one go. I use a Gaff helmet with a custom sticker on it with my Instagram and my website on it, along with my watermarker signature. So then surfers can just know exactly who I am in the water and say, hey, you got a clip of me, where can I get that after? And they can't remember my name. I show them the back of my helmet, I tell them my name, they have a higher chance of remembering who I am. Likewise, I put this turquoise in pretty much everything that I have, and I try to like brand this color so then that if surfers or people just see me out shooting, they can be like, oh, that's the turquoise, that's Connor Trimble, like boom. Associate the two together and remember who I am easier. I will say though that the circle sticker doesn't work great. There's a lot of creases at the edges and it kind of looks like a target, but if I were to redo this, I'd probably do like a longer rectangular one or individual letters like films. I'd probably get a custom color helmet. Also, the brighter your helmet, the safer it is for you out there. And mine can get mixed in with the whitewash really easily. And something like a neon yellow or orange is the safest if safety is your priority above all else. I just put a GoPro sticky mount on the top here to test out showing the POV of surf, and I use this with a mouth mount and a floaty. I use DaFins, they're turquoise as well, and they have these little ankle pads on them. The ankle pads make them fit better, and I actually cut the top safety strap off of them so there's just like one less piece of fabric there. At a wave-like pipeline though, I would suggest using straps to keep your fins on, and I suggest it especially if you're new out there or in big waves in general. I typically don't wear a second ankle strap, but on really big days I will, or especially if I'm shooting fisheye. Honestly, just the other day I was out body surfing in like 3 or 4 foot waves, and I just got absolutely slammed and my fin just shot straight off of me. And at that moment I was like, man, I wish that I had that extra ankle strap on, but personal preference of comfort, and I would suggest having that though if you're really worried about losing a fin. I think that the fins are the best combo of flexibility and power. You can tread water really easily with them, but this blade is crazy flexible. The big thing to note is that the blade on bigger size DaFins are much bigger than smaller sizes. This is an XL and this is a small, look at how much more power I'm gonna be getting out of an XL fin versus a small DaFin. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you have smaller feet, maybe getting like a stiffer blade with a little longer blade could be better, so then you're getting about the same amount of power that I am. And I also suggest having a backup pair of fins. Also, if you're gonna go all in on the branding of a color, I'd appreciate it if you don't go with turquoise. Purple, pink, red, navy, whatever. I've tried a lot of different wetsuits, and my favorite is the Xcel Comp 2mm. I just feel like this is the best one that doesn't give me a rash on the neck. It's the most comfortable, and I really like the magnetic snapping in the front. I don't like the full sleeves because it feels like a lot of weight in the arms, but I will wear long sleeves on marathon days where I know I'm gonna be in the sun for a long time just to protect myself from the sun. But no matter what time of year, even if it's really warm or cold in Hawaii, I'm typically wearing this 2mm wetsuit to avoid rashes, shoulder sunburn, and because I think that you can actually swim faster in a 2mm spring suit than you can in board shorts and a jacket top like this, because it's kind of floppy and it's just a giant thing of drag, and I don't think that you can move very well, which this is comfortable if you're sitting in a channel and not moving all day, but a lot of the breaks in Hawaii, you're gonna be moving all day. This one's kind of funny, but people are always making fun of me when they open up the back of my car because I have so much Vaseline everywhere, and a lot of times it's gross and covered in sand, and they probably think I'm a freak. But I use it on my ankles, my neck, my armpits to avoid rub burns and cuts from my fins on my ankles. It just makes your day a lot more comfortable, and yeah, lather up. It's gonna make your life a lot more enjoyable. I wear Vertra Sunscreen. I've been in love with this sunscreen for the past 10 years, and I'm lucky enough to actually call these guys a sponsor, but I used it, I think, for 6 years religiously before that. So seriously, thank you guys at Vertra for taking care of me. I use the Kona Gold Shane Dorian color stick. That's my preference, or the clear one. Hands down my favorite. Zinc 6 that are Hawaii compliant and reef safe and water resistant for a super long time. It can get hard to take off, but just use makeup removal wipes and it comes right off. If I'm shooting underwater, especially those really cool duck diving shots, I'm bringing goggles out with me. I usually stuff them in the front of my wetsuit, and I suggest bringing a mask that covers your nose so you can flip every which way underwater and not have water shooting up your nose. I like this low profile, flexible mask that I also use for freediving. One thing I would suggest is getting a clear one, so then that way you can actually see your screen a little bit better. Polarized masks, they distort how bright your screen is. Sometimes you might overexpose because you think that the image needs to be brighter than it should be. A few extra things I like to have that aren't totally necessary is a towel poncho. I have this one from Pneumatics because it's so light and dries quickly. It just makes changing into a wetsuit easier. Another luxury item that is ridiculous is a 1 gallon water jug from Yeti. It's stupid expensive, but I love this thing. I keep it in the car and it's super cold when I get out after a long day in the water. I use soup trays to make big ice cubes, and then I just throw a couple of those in and it's cold for a few days. If I'm shooting from land, I typically bring a change of clothes and I use my RF1-500. It's typically plenty zoomed in enough. Sometimes I'll bring my 2x extender to get creative and super tight angles. But if you use the 2x extender, I suggest using a tripod to deal with the shake. Something to note is that the 1.4x extender is a little bit sharper than the 2x extender, and I kind of regret not getting that one instead. For the rare closer spot or shooting lifestyle on the beach, I use my 70-200 RF 2.8. This is my go-to for campaigns, and sometimes I'll use my 50mm 1.2 on land, but typically, I prefer the 70-200 for that campaign stuff, and I'll go into that in a separate commercial lifestyle video. But I will say that my biggest gripe with the 70-200 is that it's not internal zoom like the old EF version was, so I think that it's a little bit less weather resistant. I usually bring my RF 15-35 2.8, which is actually what I'm filming this on right now. And when I use a wide angle, I like to use the Polar Pro circular polarizer, or I'll leave my 15-35 at home and I'll just use my 24-105 with this polarizer. If you're wondering if I use a polarizer in the water, the answer is no. Typically I do not, but I like to use a Polar Pro VND 6-9 on sunny days if I'm shooting only video in the water. Let's stick to photography for this video, and if you have video questions, leave it in the comments below, or I'll make a whole separate video on all the video gear that I have too. As you can see, it's kind of a lot. A must-have for me are the Defender lens caps from Polar Pro. I've fallen in love with these things the last year. They're thick and super protective. They aren't too long or leave oil smudges like similar products. Another accessory I love is the Peak Design quick release strap because the dongles fit in the housing perfectly and it's so easy to take on and off my camera. I use a Manfred or tripod with a fluid head, mainly for video. I like that it extends so it can go really low to the ground for creative shots. I also like the latch system, which only has 2 locking points, so there's less places for it to break. Honestly, if I were a land shooter, I would probably invest into a really nice tripod like a Sackler system, but I'm more of a water and a drone guy. And speaking of drones, I use a Mavic 3 Cine with a turquoise wrap so surfers know exactly which drone is mine out there in the lineup. I also use the Polar Pro filters on my drone and absolutely love these. One big thing I'd suggest for anyone with a drone is to use one of these super bright controllers. It helps midday when it's really bright out. Also, if you're in a pinch, you can use this as a power bank, and I've used it for my phone on airplanes when there's no outlet. When I'm droning, I like to treat it like a video game, so I'll wear AirPods a lot of times, or I'll use a JBL Clip 4 and just attach that onto my backpack. One last go-to is the 4TB SSD, 2000 megabytes per second transfer speed. You can transfer terabytes of footage in no time. I've never had them crash, and they're super durable. If you've made it this far in the video, please consider subscribing to my channel, giving this video a like, and if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'm happy to get back to you. These last few items are just some miscellaneous things that I've really been liking lately. When I don't use my gallon of water, I usually have this 36-liter Yeti water bottle. I don't use an insulated one to save on weight when I'm carrying around camera gear, and I love the non-spill drinking top on this. Maybe this is TMI, but hopefully it helps someone. I get cold sores typically when I'm not sleeping and I get way too much sun, and when there's really good waves, those are two things that are absolutely going to happen. I take Lysine vitamins to be preventative, and I also use this over-the-counter cream. I can kind of be a clothes snob, and I've really been liking the Florence Marine X unstructured hats. They're super breathable and comfortable, and they always go back to form. I really love the Free Fly bamboo hoodies. They're pretty thin and breathable, but they protect you from the sun a lot. Honestly, I'd rather be smelly than be super sunburnt. And these are especially amazing on boats. One thing I really like is the pocket. I put lens caps or other multi-tools or whatever I need in there. If you don't like the hood, the Florence Marine X Airtex long sleeves have been really sick. I've been really enjoying that. And same with Florence Marine X Boarshorts. I've been loving these for the past year. They can fit a big iPhone 14 Pro with a case in this front pocket. They're thick enough to be durable, but thin enough to dry quickly, and they fit my legs that are pretty thick. I got a big booty, you know, and so huge fan of the Florence Marine X gear. Seriously, the team over there, keep it up. A good t-shirt option is the Lululemon Metal Vent t-shirt, which is actually what this is. It's super breathable, and if you want to get them at a bargain, you can get them on Poshmark, and if you don't know what that is, your girlfriend definitely does. If you wear these in front of clients, I feel like everyone respects Lululemon, and it's a go-to work shirt for me. And I always have clients saying, oh, yeah, I like your Lululemon shirt, or people really dig it. And since we've made it this far, my go-to sandals, or as we say in Hawaii, are slippers, are rainbows, because they mold your feet and they are insanely durable. This one's kind of silly, but it brings me a lot of joy, but I've really been loving my waffle towel lately. It absorbs a lot, but it also dries really quickly. Phew, that was a lot. I think the only thing I'm forgetting is I wear an Apple Watch sometimes in the water. I think it's kind of fun to count your calories and see how much you burn throughout a day. Sometimes I've had sessions where I burn, I think, 1,800 calories in one session, which is the most. And for labeling gear, I use a bunch of Gaff Tape and a Sharpie, or I'll use a label maker. And also one thing with the drone, I definitely suggest just getting your drone license just so you can legally fly and not have to worry about anything. The last thing we need to do is look at the cost totals of everything. Here's the cost total of just water essentials, just to shoot water. Here's the water essentials plus the frivolous add-ons that I like to have. And then here's the combined cost of all the gear that I have to shoot surf photography in the water and on land. Whew. But yeah, it's an expensive hobby, job, and if you're a professional, it makes you realize how much you should be charging for the shots that you're getting in the water, especially for the amount of time and effort you're putting in shooting and editing afterwards. But yeah, that's it. That's all my gear. Seriously, if you have any questions, throw them in the comments below. Happy to talk with you and have a conversation about it, and see you in the next one.